All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're going to tackle one of the most persistent conspiracy theories out there, one that's been kicking around the internet for decades. Was Osama bin Laden secretly a CIA agent?
You know, it all starts with a question, just like this one, pulled from a real online forum. It's this nagging feeling, right? This idea that you've seen proof somewhere, maybe a picture of bin Laden with some high-level US officials, something that just suggests he was on the payroll.
Maybe you've been scrolling online and seen this photo pop up. I mean, there he is, Osama bin Laden, apparently right in the White House, smiling next to Hillary Clinton when she was Secretary of State. It's a pretty shocking image, and for a lot of people, that's all the proof they need. Or, hey, maybe it was this one that you saw, showing him with another Secretary of State, Condoleezza Rice. These images, they've been making the rounds for years, and they're always presented as this slam dunk, undeniable proof of a secret alliance.
Okay, but here's the reality. That photo with Hillary Clinton, it's a pretty well-known Photoshop. The original picture is from back in 2004, and it shows her meeting an Indian musician. And the Condoleezza Rice picture? Get this, that was an entry in a Photoshop contest for an April Fool's Day joke way back in 2007. They're fake. So if the evidence, the photos, are completely fake, then where did this incredibly powerful myth even come from? Well, the answer isn't in a simple conspiracy, it's rooted in a real history that's way more complex and, frankly, way more important. The real origin of this whole idea isn't in some fabricated meeting. No, it's in a very real and incredibly ambitious CIA program from the Cold War. A top-secret covert op that had a codename Operation Cyclone. So what was Operation Cyclone? Well, it was one of the biggest and most expensive covert operations in the history of the CIA. And the goal? It was pretty straightforward. Support the Afghan resistance fighters, the Mujahideen, and basically bleed the Soviet army dry. The idea was to turn their invasion of Afghanistan into their own version of Vietnam. And the scale of this thing was just massive, and it grew like crazy. It started off with some pretty modest funding in '79, but by 1987, the US was pouring over $500 million a year into this conflict. And they weren't just sending cash, they were sending advanced weapons, like those super effective Stinger missiles. But here's the part that is absolutely critical to understand. The CIA never, ever dealt with the Afghan fighters directly. Instead, all of the money, all of the weapons, we're talking billions of dollars, were all channeled through Pakistan's intelligence agency, the ISI. They were the middlemen. They were the ones who got to decide which rebel groups got all the US and Saudi-funded goodies. And this is the detail that busts the whole myth. The CIA was funding the Afghan Mujahideen, the local resistance. Osama bin Laden wasn't an Afghan rebel. He was a rich guy from Saudi Arabia who went to Afghanistan in '79 to use his own money and his family's connections to help the fight. He was kind of operating on a parallel track, sure, but he was never, ever on the CIA's payroll. But hold on. Just because bin Laden wasn't a paid CIA agent, that doesn't mean the story's over. Not by a long shot. This is where things get much darker, and we get into this really complicated idea called blowback. Now listen to this quote. It's pretty stunning. It's from Robin Cook, who was Britain's foreign secretary, a top diplomat. And he argues that al-Qaeda wasn't directly created by the West, but it was a product of the environment that Western intelligence helped build in Afghanistan. This is the heart of the blowback argument. The idea that a secret operation can have these totally unforeseen and catastrophic consequences years later. This really breaks it down perfectly. On one side, you have the simple myth. Bin Laden was a puppet, a paid agent. But on the other side, you have the much more serious and complex blowback argument. This isn't about direct employment. It's about indirect consequences. It's the idea that by funding a holy war against the Soviets, the US accidentally helped create the perfect breeding ground for a global jihadist movement to grow. So how did this even happen? Well, Pakistan's ISI, the middlemen, they tended to favor the most extreme, the most radical Islamist factions, and the CIA just kind of went along with it. Guys like Jalaluddin Haqqani, who would later become one of bin Laden's closest allies, got direct funding. This whole operation turned Afghanistan into a magnet for thousands of foreign fighters, the so-called Afghan Arabs, who came from all over to train and fight. It got so bad that Pakistan's own Prime Minister, Benazir Bhutto, reportedly warned President George H.W. Bush, "You are creating a Frankenstein." Okay, so let's try to pull all this together. After going through this whole tangled history, what's the final takeaway here?
First things first, let's be absolutely clear. The answer to that original question is a definite, unambiguous no.
There is just no credible historical evidence that Osama bin Laden was ever a CIA agent or that he got direct funding from the United States. That theory is a myth. Period.
So let's just recap the big points. The viral proof you see online, it's all photoshopped. The real story is Operation Cyclone, a massive program of indirect support that was all funneled through Pakistan. And while bin Laden was doing his own thing, American policy helped build the networks, the skills, and the training grounds that would eventually give rise to Al-Qaeda. So yeah, the simple myth is false, but the reality, well, the reality is a whole lot more troubling.
In the end, the story of Osama bin Laden and the CIA isn't some simple spy tale. It's this powerful and, frankly, tragic lesson in blowback. It's a cautionary tale that really forces us to ask a tough question. What is the true cost when the allies you arm today become the enemies you end up fighting tomorrow?